I like to call, and I think I got this from Kirk, but like a VID is slobber injection.
It's pretty much Hawk 2, girl.
Yeah. It's slobber. It's slobber injection is what it is.
It goes when it's good and ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Hawk 2, spit on that thing.
Yeah, Hawk 2. I should have wore that shirt. I have a shirt that says
She's
Hawk
pretty
2.
hot, though, too.
What's that?
She's pretty hot.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she's from the South.
I mean,
Turn the air
she
conditioning
can probably make some good cornbread there, son.
Well, she might be hot, but I'm fairly certain she's a couple fries short of a Happy Meal.
That's all right. My elevator don't go to the top either. We're good.
Mother.
Crazy, never mind.
Okie dokie.
So the idea here is...
Edit.
Nope, leaving it in.
So this, we have one here that Kyle's going to go through, but the way this would work is that the injector itself involves a small volume, what we call the cup, where the metered fuel from the governed system drips into this cup. And then there's some holes that open between this cup and the main cylinder volume. And so very late in the compression stroke, the fuel is dropped in on the intake stroke. So while the piston's going back,
Not forced. It's just dropped in.
it just drops in. See, this doesn't work well on a space station.
No.
Only in a barrel, inverted flight not approved. So anyway, so gravity drops the metered fuel into the cup, and then there's a valve that closes off after the metering event, which seals. It's basically a poppet valve. And then now you got the fuel sitting in the cup, and it's communicating with the main cylinder through these small holes. So very, very late in the compression stroke, you're building this pressure, you're building this temperature, you're trying to get up to that 500 psi to get near that 1,000 degree Fahrenheit air. So this air starts to come through these holes, and they choke because the flow goes supersonic in there. So then all of a sudden there's a max amount of flow. So this hot air is coming in there, and it starts to boil that fuel. And so all of a sudden the pressure inside that cup starts to go up because the liquid changes state into a gas, which needs to have more volume, but the volume's fixed, so the pressure starts to go up. So the boiling fuel starts to push the rest of the fuel back through the holes into the main cylinder. So now they're going through it's going through this small hole under basically, I hate to call it steam, but vapor pressure from the boiling of the fuel shoots the rest of the fuel back out into the main cylinder, causes it to break up, and then you pray to the gods that it lights.
Ooh, still picture.
So anyway, and the problem is you're depending on the basic action in the cylinder to control the injection timing event. So these things have their issues, but they're very, very simple relative to the other engines, and you avoid a lot in patent issues. And their heyday, Braun's was starting to build engines. Of course, the next year the patents were all drops, but the company kept going because it was a very simple thing, very popular in boats. A lot of fishing vessels and others use these things because it used a cheap fuel and it was very inexpensive and not complicated. So it survived for a long, long time in marine service.
And for the most part, your typical farmer, for the most part, could work on these.
Absolutely. There's no precision in anything. And it ran on kerosene, which you could get by the barrel down at the grain elevator.
Absolutely.
And so that was Clessy's idea. And of course, these went all around the world.
Right.
But kerosene was all around the world because the Standard Oil Company wanted a standard kerosene, and it was available everywhere. So this idea went many places, and it really found a heart here in our country because kerosene was so available. Electricity still wasn't very trusted.
Right.
And it was a valiant, very good business idea, especially at a time when you had farm engines that in the early to mid-teens, they were still fairly complicated, had buzz coils, and you needed dry cell batteries, or you had some sort of a magneto, which was a complicated mechanism.
But these were also a real pain in the ass to start.
They could be.
I mean, like down there in the annex where your little bordello of love is.
His Wonder World.
Yeah, Kyle's little corner.
It looks like Cheech and Chong's in there.
He literally has a hot water heater set up to put hot water in the hoppers of these engines to get that temperature up. To start them. Because, I mean, if you don't, you're going to crank your ass off forever.
You will. But you know what? Now that we've owned too many of them and gone through too many rebuilds, when you start getting them correct, they are a big game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would say that when they were new out of the box, it was a lot different.
Right.
But it wasn't as easy as a Horse and Half M with a Wyco EK on it by any means.
But the Wyco EK wasn't available when these came out.
No.
So you had these open frame
Right.
Like igniter trip, and you had to get all
Yep.
that perfect.
Yep.
This was a little simpler, I think.
But see, at the same
Unless
time,
you
though,
tampered with it.
Well, yeah.
Sears and Roebuck were selling thermoil engines, which was VEED.
Well, the thermoil line is Sears and Roebuck.
Right. Well, Sears was selling thermoils, but they
yeah.
were also selling economies at the same time.
Correct.
And they were selling 5 economies to 1 thermoil, or whatnot.
Right.
Well, on your thermal line, when it first came out, they were using a converted gas engine.
Well, that was
Basically, yes.
The first
T
entry was Hercules was probably the most predominant builder
Yeah.
of all
Right.
of them.
Yeah.
And the T line came 1917 to 18.
And they were shit.
They were a hand grenade. That's
They
everyone.
would blow
yeah.
themselves apart. Either the cylinder would blow off or the crank would break on them.
Right.
Well, and that's what everyone. When I say I run a T thermoil, and I love running T thermoils because they're so unique. But it's like when you start a T, it's pulling the pin out of a hand grenade and holding the hand grenade in your hand.
And you got one
Yeah.
down here in the corner.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I have a 7-horse and a
You
crank's
literally
broken.
babysit that thing.
You don't let go of the pin.
Yeah.
And you babysit that thing while it's sitting there running.
I don't get within. I get within very close distance keep myself within close distance because
Right.
the 7T that's in the annex, that is a pristine engine that came out of Maine. I think I am the 3rd or 4th owner of that engine.
Right.
Someone took care of that. I have the crankshaft that broke when Tim Mayberry owned it
Okay.
10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, he caught it. Thankfully, he heard it and he went and dumped the air and just kept his hand on the flywheel. But that snapped a crank.
Right.
And that engine was taken care of.
Right.
Yeah, that's how mine is. The 7T that I have, the
See,
crank
I had
is it was broke and repaired.
Okay.
And I am frightened if it ever ran again because the repair is hideous. I mean, bad.
Well, you can get a crank for it.
Yeah, which I have a crank.
Yeah.
I had a thermal. I mean, it was a 7-horse. I don't know if it was a T. I don't remember what it was. But it ran
Well, the
great.
T's look like a regular
Right.
Hercules,
It was the heavier version.
so it was like a U.
I guess so. Okay.
Okay.
It was a nice one. I should have kept
They're
it.
a little more refined.
Right.
They're
Stiffen up quite a bit.
yeah.
And now the only
lot more cast iron.
The only Veed I have in my collection is the little 1.5 Cummins. I got
He's in
from
for a
Mike.
treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to fun times.
Yeah, you get into that smaller stuff. It's meh.
Well, they're just they'll run good for about half an hour and some will be absolutely perfect.
Right.
But most of them run good for about an hour and they get too hot.
Right.
And they start igniting too quickly. And they'll
Right.
just sit there and rock, and you'll never get them started.
Right.
So they're just the 1.5s or 3s they're cute because they're small.
Right.
But I'd rather have a 6 or a 9 any day.
Absolutely.
So
Well, that's my first one. Well, I had a St. Mary's oil engine one time.
Yeah.
And then got rid of it, whatever. But now I got this little 1.5 Cummins. I guess it's a Cummins.
well, that's part of the whole story of the whole thing because some of these guys get really wound about that because Cummins was contracted by Sears or contracted by Hercules to start producing parts.
Okay.
So the basic, and 17 to 18 was a T line, which basically was a total failure.
Right.
There was basically a year in between to 1919 where the U line came out.
Okay.
And there must have been, it was kind of odd because what was the GM that was a converted gas engine that was,
It's a 5.7 olds,
Yeah.
350 olds.
Yeah, it was a 350 that.
In 78, they
Yeah.
kind of like just put injectors in the spark plug holes, essentially.
1917 all over again. Basically, let's take a gas engine. And
But they did it in 1964 with the Toro Flow, too. They didn't learn their lesson.
well,
So there's many companies that tried this.
Yeah.
Cooper, the Mount Hope Engineering, these Reeves engines, they killed a guy with one. They bought the Hope Engineering company that had moved from Columbus up to Mount Vernon, and they needed an inline multi-cylinder engine, and they bought that company, and they screwed the injectors in the spark plug hole and went through the same disaster in the 20s,
It's the definition of insanity.
That's bean counters.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought those were Mexicans.
That's Mexican.
Bean counters?
No,
That's-
well, I mean,
that's your-
it's a company, so you
other
don't want to let the
beans.
engineers go nuts because the product will be too expensive.
Right.
But if you let the bean counters go too nuts, then you get the 5.7 olds, the 478
I
cubic
gotcha.
inch
CC
Toro
Moore.
Flow, the
Well,
Cooper Bessemer Hope Engineering, and the T. Because you think about Hercules in the time was very successful in
Yeah.
getting big, and it had a big bureaucracy, but it was a business, so they were looking at like, do we really need all this stiffness? And the engineer's like, well, I don't know. They run good on the test stand. Ship them.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The farmers will show you how to break them.
right?
Well, and that's
Yeah,
the
hold my beer.
Watch this.
The interesting thing is that I'd love to see, and it's probably all lost in the sands of time, but how this also spurred on, because it was like, if you look at 1917 to 1918, it was a complete failure. And it was like everybody else would have went with their tail behind their legs back to the barn. But Hercules must have realized the shortcomings quickly.
Right.
And there was a lot of quick design into getting those U's out the door in 1919.
We dicked up with this Model T.
Yeah.
We got to get something out the door now, because we got the patterns, we got this, and we got the foundry. We got to go.
Well, from the T to the U, there was only like 2 years of development.
Right.
It was like 17 when the T was
17, 18 was T, and then there was like a year between 1919 is when the U's started coming out.
Well, but 1985, the Olds diesel was a really good light-duty engine that nobody would touch with a 30-foot pole, or Hungarian. Sorry.
It's all right.
Ukrainians would, though.
Uh-oh, let's not go down that one.
Snake oil. Snake oil. What?
The 85 Olds had roller cam, bigger crank journals, bigger pin journals. Had a lift boosting pump on the side of the engine. Had big improvements in it, but boy, their reputation was shot.
Yeah.
And that might be one thing that Hercules had to do, is their reputation was on the line. So they said, okay, guys, fix it.
So did Clessy go to Hercules and say, "Hey, this is what I need. This is what I want to do"?
No.
Or what's the relationship between Cummins and Hercules?
He had a machine shop. Wasn't he running machine shop at that time?
Mm-hmm.
And once again, some of
the earlier Cummins engines look just like.
But they were an engine.
say that.
They were engines.
I get really pissy about that. Well, and there's an
I'm not wrong, though.
No, and there's an interesting theory about that, because there's and some of these guys get really wound about this Cummins stuff. But when you think about it, and when you think about manufacturing, who'd made what?
Chris is out there playing with himself.
Do you think that? Does anyone honestly think that Cummins Machine Shop built everything? No, I think Cummins called up Hercules and said, "Hey, make me bases, make me flywheels, make me cranks. We'll put this on."
We'll put our injection system on. We're going to put your injection system on.
What's that?
Well, I thought Cummins was an engine company. They're machining, but they use the foundries there in town to make their parts.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at like you say, Kyle, when you look at a Cummins thermoil, for lack of better, the water hopper's different.
Okay.
But it's like when you look down the cylinder it wasn't completely redesigned. Now, when you look at the Canadian versions, they look similar, but they're not similar.
Okay.
But in my opinion, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail on this.
Maybe,
sorry, Chase, but
maybe they're not similar because they had a different type of fuel up there too.
No, it's not. When I say similar, the whole engine looks like it's used thermoil.
I gotcha.
Except for the water hopper.
Okay.
So this is my opinion. Did Cummins say to Hercules, "Make us some bases"? Well, we're gonna assemble engines also.
Right.
And but if you
put our name on them,
put our water hopper on. Some of them have the cast logo in and stuff like that. So that's probably lost a lot in the sands of time.
Right.
But Cummins or Clessy had a machine shop, and they were contracting some of this work out.
Okay.
But basically, the story and there might be a little bit of fuzziness to this, the horse and a half 3 and 3 line of U and UA thermoils, Cummins did the bulk of work on it.
Right.
And I think that, when stuff started coming back, that's when they really got stiffed. And I think Hercules, if Hercules isn't getting paid, Cummins isn't getting paid.
Right.
And I think that was some of the...
And that's probably the time where Cummins just said, "Hey, I'm done," and Hercules just gobbled it all up and said, "Come to me, baby."
No, I don't think that. No.
I was under the impression that the Cummins built the horse and a half and a 3.
Okay, and then
they sold them to Sears.
Okay.
And Hercules built the other size engines.
Okay.
Right.
I was under the impression that the machine shop was an engine builder.
Right.
The local foundries there in Columbus making the castings for the whole engine. Wasn't that the case?
No, it was Evansville. They were in Columbus, but I think they were... My impression is the machine shop was under contract of Hercules.
Everything was cast in Evansville.
Yeah.
Cummins got castings.
Well, I thought they built the horse and a half and the 3.
It could be.
And they built the whole friggin' thing.
Well, they are different.
And they didn't work with Hercules because, I forget the guy's name, sorry, it's senility, folks. there was a guy that worked with VEED who would go to the different companies that signed a license with VEED to build the bronze system. And he would work with that company and make this work on their engine. And so he went to all the different companies that had signed up to make these, St. Mary's and the Canadian companies. Oh, and he ended up going down to Columbus, Indiana, and met Clessie Cummins. And this guy eventually got along so well with Cummins and the ideas Cummins had about engines in the future that he quit VEED and went to work for Cummins.
That's Hans Knudsen.
Knudsen,
Yep.
that's right. You're right. Yeah,
Yep.
man, thank you.
Yep.
Wait till you get old. And that guy quit VEED and went to work for Clessie. And then that's when they, like staging a rocket, you blow the VEED stage off. Because they actually went out of business. They lost it because they had a 30-day guarantee. And the engines would leave Columbus, Indiana, go to Chicago, go out somewhere, and 30 days later come back. And some came back worn out because if you had Standard of Indiana kerosene,
Right.
it ran good. Like the woods of Wisconsin, they had Standard of Indiana kerosene, and they wear them. And the other woods come back, they couldn't get them started, they couldn't deal with them.
Right.
And so the only guy that made money was the old man that had the Dray company that hauled the engines from the serial line building, which was an old mill where they had a machine shop, down to the railroad yards and back. He said hauling engines, it didn't say which way. So he got paid taking them from the railroads to the freight depot up to the serial line building and back and forth. And he just made a fortune, and Clessie went under. And I don't recall them having a lot of interaction with Hercules.
Oh, I think there was a lot of interaction, actually, yeah.
I mean, this is,
Yeah.
I read about this 35 years ago.
I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah,
That's why
no.
I don't know.
As far as I know, Cummings was under, the machine shop Cummings was under contract of Hercules.
So making parts for Hercules.
Yeah, and I
shipping
think
them to Evansville.
I think that they were so far behind and stuff. That's basically they
Hercules?
said, yes,
Okay,
Hercules.
okay.
I think they said you guys build the horse in half and three.
Right.
Basically, just like a vendor would be, you're
Subcontract,
subcontracted out to
absolutely.
that
Yeah,
vendor.
Yeah, you're farming it out.
Yep. And they went out as the Thermoil line. They didn't go out under the Cummings line. Now, I'm sure
Had the sticker for Thermoil, right?
this is from 1919 to 1921 approximately was the U series line, which is the Detroit lubricator and all that stuff. And then after that, we changed the UA line
UA,
because we
yep.
saw some of the flaws. The accountants got a hold of it and said that Detroit lubricator on the back costs way too much money. It's a piece of shit. It doesn't work. Get rid of that. Put a lubricator on it and put a simple fuel pump. And that's why the vent is on the 7 and 9s, because they realize we have injector leakage that doesn't make the engine run. Here's a cheap way to get around it.
Get around that.
And that's when you also have the U and the UA series of horse and a half and 3s, and same thing. We got the UA series has simple lubricator on it. It's a little simpler engine.
Right.
Now, at that point, Cummings is probably starting to build stuff by themselves on their own and selling it under the Cummings Oil engine company.
And that's for like the Model P and the Model the one.
Well, that's yeah.
Hold off there. That's a different style.
Yeah.
Well,
We haven't
different style
gotten
of
there yet.
injection, yes, but that's when they start, say, hey, we're kind of done with this VEED system, and we're going to move to something
Yeah.
else.
Well, and I think what happened is that
I understand it's a different injection. I'm just saying that's kind of where they parted company and said, hey, we're
Well, they went under.
They just
They went out of business. But see, Clessie had driven for the Irwin family, which was a big banking family in Columbus. So he went out of business several times, and they had believed in him, and they kept funding it again.
Right.
That's why Clessie never owned a penny of that company.
Right.
Yeah, he belonged to the Irwin family.
Ah.
So, but they bailed him out several times. So he collapsed on the VEEDs. They struggled with these new system that Knudsen helped them develop. They went into the shrimp boat fleet and got pulled out when the things failed.
Shrimp boat.
And so they failed there.
Right.
And then they actually tried to get into the vehicles and that's when they finally caught.
Okay.
So it was like, the third or fourth time of being in business is when he really caught.
Right.
So the Thermoil thing, the VEED thing, was an end-up disaster, and I don't
Yeah,
think he made any
his
money
claim
about
of fame was what? A vehicle that had his motor in it. That was it?
Cadillac.
Drove across country, or what was
it? It was a Packard that in January 31. They were struggling. The depression was on.
Yeah.
They knew they had a winter here, but it was the P.T. Barnum effect.
Mm-hmm.
Most businessmen that are successful are good showmen as well. And so what Clessie did is in the Depression in 1931, it was very difficult to drive in the winter. So he drove nonstop from Columbus, Indiana to New York City.
Yeah.
And
I knew there was a drive involved. I couldn't remember what it was.
He called the auto show, and he tried to...
Easy.
Who put that there?
Who put that? Hold on a second, I got to get the refilling.
That's the first bottle he broke in here.
So
It didn't break.
he called the auto show and said, "I want to buy a booth to display an auto at your auto show." Well, what do you have? I've got a diesel-powered front click. And so he could not even get them to rent him a space. He said, "Okay, I'll show them. I'll drive up there nonstop and drive straight from Columbus, Indiana, which is unheard of. No big deal today. Everybody's done it. But back then, the roads were horrible.
Absolutely.
It was in the middle of the winter. So he drove nonstop. He, up here in PA, he went off the road, went down over the hill, had to be pulled out, and the car was kind of wrecked. And at one point, the battery was so dead, if it ever stopped, he was screwed because he'd never get it started again. But he drove all the way to New York City and parked right in front of the venue where they're having the auto show, and came and said, "Hey, come out and see the diesel-powered automobile." And they come out, like, inside is all these beautiful cars, highly waxed, and this thing looked like it'd been through World War II. Like, what the hell? He says, "Oh, I just drove from Columbus, Indiana, nonstop." Yeah, really? And so that was a big hit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Henry Ford got a kick out of that. And he invited Clussy Cummins to come to Dearborn
Right.
and meet with him. And he gave him some great advice about business and finance and all that. And so, that was one of the things Clussy would do. He also did it in World War II, where he was trying to get diesel engines into tanks because diesel fuel is so it's more efficient to run and it's less
It's
volatile.
easier. Yeah, it's easier to transport, and
And he drove they gave him like I think it was I can't remember if it was a Lee or a Grant, but it was a crummy tank, but he put one of his 4-cylinder H engines in it and drove that to Washington, D.C., clanking down the road. And I remember back
10
in
mile an hour.
92, because I met Clussy's son, C. Lyle Cummins, who wrote a lot of those books, and he was saying, "Oh, yeah, back on the farm," he says, "there's probably still the tracks because when they got the diesel engine in it, they got the farmer driving around in the woods and all that." And he remembered seeing the tracks that the tank had made in World War II. So Clussy was quite the showman and very much, into this. And I think that's why the Irwin family continued to fund him.
Right.
Because he was really dedicated to it. Kind of like an Elon Musk.
Yeah, but I say he's like the
well,
Elon Musk of that
he had
time.
in the 50s diesel-powered Cummins Indy cars too.
Well, they still hold a record because in 1936 they decided, are we going to go to converting fuel to noise like a 2-cycle Detroit, or are we going to stay with 4-cycle?
Yeah.
So they entered 2 diesel cars in the Indy 500, and one was a 2-stroke and one was a 4-stroke. And to this day, it's the only Indy car that's ever run the whole race nonstop.
Yeah.
It was a 1936 4-stroke car. Well, they didn't return to Indy until after the war. In '52, they were introducing what they call the PT fuel system, which replaced what Knudsen and Clussy had developed, and they introduced the turbo supercharger set. And so in 1952, they had the engine land on its side.
It was on its side.
Locked down. And
Real low slung car.
The car was running good, but they didn't have an air cleaner, and the intake was on the bottom. It was sucking up all the dirt
All the
and
rubber.
and it destroyed the turbo supercharger set. So then it looked like a steam locomotive going around.
Yeah.
The black smoke was rolling, and they pulled it because what's this? Is it a Stanley steamer out there?
Hey, might have won that way. Nobody could see you get around them.
Well, the car wasn't done. I mean, the car wasn't black flagged and wasn't done. I mean, it was still running in the race, but they decided to pull it from market. And they haven't been back to Indy since then. And I got to see that car run when they were taking it up in '94, I think, because they stored those cars in a fuel system building, and I worked in the fuel system group, so I would be in that, using a lab in there. So when they'd fire those up, I'd be out there watching, and it ran like really bad, And they had the 52 car, they had the 36 4-stroke car, and I think they had one the 31 Packard. They had another Packard in there with I think an A engine in it, not the A they got when they bought Onan, but the A that they developed before the war.
Okay.
We divulge.
Did?
Digress. And
Hey,
go on a tangent.
we're at least still on diesels. We haven't gone to
We
steam.
haven't gone to steam and nuclear.
We haven't got nuclear yet.
Adolf.
Give it to her.
Heil. The Führer's face?
Swear to God, Adolf Hitler came back as the security guard out front.
The old guy.
Oh my God.
That's a big trend. These two got into a tiff last night.
Hey, June last year, he wouldn't let me in. I came in, it was dark. I had to call Austin. And Austin, he came up with the golf cart and was like, I will vouch for him. Let him in. He's not a member. He doesn't have a window sticker. He's like, I will vouch for him. He's my problem now. I'm like, I didn't know. I've never had this problem before. I'm like, I'm grateful that you got somebody that's sitting up there that's doing that. I'm like, geez.
After their little love fest last night, I went and told Mark, I said, look, we don't mail these cards out. Some of these people are coming from, a long way away, and they work, they have families.
Yeah.
And it's, they get here late, but there are people that work here, and they're allowed in. Because anybody who has the window hanging, the mirror hanging card can come in. But if you don't have it,
that was the boat I was in.
So, and I've gone up there many times and said, let them in, and let them in. And, they got, the kerfuffle was, I knew he was coming. I knew I was going to have to get up there. He was trying to call him. He didn't answer. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And then all hell breaks loose. And he's like, that guy, he's doing his job. And then I got there and said, well, he almost tried to run me over. I was going to call the state police. So he kept coming forward. And he says, I'm going down there no matter what. And I'm like,
part of that story is true, but I never tried to run him over at all. He was literally standing in front of my truck trying to stop it.
well, then you're trying to run him over because you crept up on him.
No, I didn't move.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You heard it here first. I didn't move. Isn't he like the county commissioner or something?
He was elected.
He's a fucking politician, so that story's bullshit.
His lips were moving. He's a politician.
Yeah, exactly.
He's friggin' lying. Well, I decided with you anyway. Oh, I got him.
Well, I said, do you know Mike Murphy?
I said, boy.
I said, do you know Mike Murphy? He says, who's Mike Murphy? I'm like, Mike fucking Murphy. He's like, I don't know Mike Murphy.
Yeah, he does.
I said, he's the fucking president of this place.
I've known that guy for years.
He said he didn't know you. Politician.
Hey, same thing. I started name dropping.
Oh, I did too. Actually, believe it or not, Kevin Kusel saved my ass.
Austin saved me.
For once.
Yep.
You can always call me.
Well, then, Kusel's like...
I was going down the list.
We try to do this, before you get here, and I'll go up there and butter him up to let you in. And a lot of times I got a goddamn card with me.
Yeah.
Because he's a card machine. You got to have that fucking card.
Yeah.
Kusel's like, who
I
is
might
it?
just have to bring a handful of them with me and just hand them out to you guys in Ohio.
No shit.
I told him, I got a sticker in my back window. I've been here before. He can go back and look at it. I'm like, I come every year, twice a year.
I'm surprised.
Kusel got out and was like, well, who is it? He goes, oh, hell, that's Kyle. Let him in. And the guy's like, are you sure? Are you sure? He's like, yeah, let him in.
Hey.
And I finally pulled
it's
in.
It's good security. I'd rather have that. I would rather have that.
I'm grateful for his donation or whatever he's doing. I don't know if it's donated or hired or what.
Donation my ass.
Is he
gets a wad of cash.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm grateful for that, but holy shit, dude. It's a gate watching job. You don't even have a gun or nothing. Chill out.
Did you roll up you don't know who I am?
Well, no, I didn't.
I'm sure he got hot because Mark said,
well,
he was yelling and screaming. I'm like,
no, I wasn't.
Kyle doesn't yell and scream.
No, I don't get that excited anymore. One, I was tired. Two, Bo would not go to sleep, and you know how that is with a 3-year-old in the backseat of the truck for 600 or 353 miles.
No, I don't.
And 3, I was just ready to go to bed. And this guy is dicking with me. I'm like, come on, man.
He thought it was a DOT checkpoint.
State of Ohio Puco, here to arrest me. Watch out.
Well, he's retired. I think he was constable. He was in state police in PA. He was.
I should have said, motherfucker, I know the judge. He's a Kentucky judge, but I know a judge.
I'm Buford T. Justice.
That's what I wish Bo would have said that. The Buford T.
I'm Buford T. Justice.
We had to watch Smokey and the Bandit after we got all settled in last night. Bo was hooked on Smokey and the Bandit and Dukes of Hazzard, so we're good. Life is good.
Justin's out there.
No, it was interesting. That was fun.
More peanut gallery that's afraid to come in.
Now wait a minute. He is a county commissioner making tax dollars off of people, being paid to be a commissioner.
It's called moonlighting.
It's a side hustle.
Side hustle. Sounds like a scheme.
I don't think commissioner pays much. Look at this over here. What is this?
He's just making the rounds.
The peanut gallery outside is trying to distractify the podcast, and you think we're bad in tangents.
Yeah, no shit.
I kind of feel like I'm in the zoo and we're the animals.
Yeah,
It seems that way.
You haven't been able to see it, but that window, and those doors have been a nonstop show of just people walking by.
Are you kidding? Really?
Yeah.
Should we lock
Well,
it
we
up?
may have told a bunch of people, like, hey, come up here and crash our party. Well, they came up.
Well,
they just won't come in.
We could bring some seats and put a peanut gallery in over here.
Well, that's what I told them. Like, come up and just like sit. And
Well, Speed Racer was over here for a while.
yeah, he was.
Roger Bolt was in here, the Bolt Award king.
He was here for about like 3 minutes and he left.
Well, he probably doesn't want to be on.
Yeah, he might have been. I don't know.
The only guy I know that got done for drunk driving got thrown out of jail. They called his friend and said, "Come and get this guy." What?
They're falling off.
Well, if you'd wear them right, they
You
wouldn't.
gotta wear them right.
Where are they? Oh, they're down.
You're supposed to wear them like that.
Oh,
They expand out. They'll fit.
They're
your head.
adjustable.
there we go.
Ta-da.
Now figured that out.
Just figured it out now.
Where he didn't want to ruin his engineer's cap.
That's right.
It's not a welding cap. It's an engineer's cap.
It's whatever you want it to be.
All right, so we was on to VEEDs. We got past air blast.
Got the best.
got
We're
through
at
politics.
VEEDs and thermals.
Me getting arrested by state police last night almost.
Yeah, we
You
got
wouldn't have called him.
You don't think you would have?
Better call me.
the SS out there.
I should have.
Because I mean, he knows me. He knows who I am. When I show up, I look like Robert E. Lee or Isaac Newton. He recognizes me,
Okay. He must know you by face, not by name.
probably.
Gotcha. I should have called you on hit Brookville.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Hawkins will do.
Oh, okay.
And I'll go up there and say, "Hey, I got a guy coming," and let him in.
Sorry, I'll do that next time.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Or they
You
can-
too.
you know-
I don't know if you know my number, but you can call him.
Well,
Which is-
I can get
Don't
on
call
somebody.
him because he won't answer his phone.
We were in the middle of something.
You were-
I'm sorry.
Welding.
We were welding.
Middle something.
Well, you're not even going to get a signal when you're welding sometimes.
Well, I just wasn't.
You know, I got my Coolspring newsletter on Monday. No, Tuesday. It was Tuesday.
I got mine today before I came over.
Okay.
I had it out in plenty of time. The printer got screwed up. And it was late getting up here to Gale to get
That's
it
all right.
out.
You did an awesome job, again, on that newsletter.
Well, thank you.
You do a great job, period, on all those newsletters.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. But you can put that parking pass in that newsletter next time.
Gail's got to do that, or Kitty's got to do, because sometimes Kitty, folds them up.
Okay.
Don't want that.
But you do a great job on that. There's a little picture of Jimmy Rush. I took a picture and sent it to him. He's in Florida doing hurricane stuff.
Well, he's working on the trucks doing the hurricane
yeah.
stuff. I figured he wouldn't be here.
Yeah, poor guy. They're waiting on another hurricane to come in or something. He goes, I said, you gonna stay there for that? He goes, hell no. He's been gone for almost a month now.
Oh, gosh.
Where was I going with that?
I don't know. We've talked about HVID.
We're on the Cummins tangent.
Well, do you
Yeah.
want to?
We'll
Kyle,
come-
do you want to go any further into VEED? I mean, we kind of
We
kind of
dibbled
glazed
on it.
over it.
Well, we should go a little bit further in the fact
Absolutely, let's
that
do it.
probably the VEED cycle went from 1917 to 1925
Now,
or so.
so let me stop you. Is the VEED cycle a
I mean, I'm
cycle
sorry, not
injection?
sorry. Yes, VEED injection.
Okay.
VEED phase.
Okay, there you
Cycle
go.
was. Thank you, Kyle.
It's really not injection. It's just
It's
a
Hawk
phase.
2, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, it's an injection system.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
It's an airless injection system.
Okay. So it is injection.
It runs on the dual cycles.
Okay.
Auto cycle type
Okay.
thing, but it's its own system. Let's call it.
Gotcha.
So I would say between, let's just call it for argument's sake, 1915 to 1925, probably about a 10-year cycle.
Okay.
I think that Hercules stopped producing. Hercules also produced engines under the Hercules oil line,
Okay.
and I think the latest literature we found on that was probably 1925.
Okay. Are there any of those engines to exist?
Yes, there's engines
Okay.
out there. Years ago, that 7-horse that you were looking at
Yeah.
that auction, that was a Hercules oil engine.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that they were pretty predominant in the oil industry because they could run on crude, like
Right.
small pump
Yeah,
jack stuff
absolutely.
like that.
It was a I think a 6-horse around Woodsfield,
Yeah.
which was oil country at that time.
So you just pull the oil right off the crude oil.
Yeah.
Pull it right off the crude. And,
Where you go.
Oh, and
Yeah.
down in there, that was
Berea and Clinton.
but that's
Oil.
that's VEED heaven down there.
Yeah.
There were boost engines down there, and
Well, there's a lot of boosts that was down there.
yeah.
And the Boost is kind of like is sort of a clone of a Hercules.
I've never seen
Yeah,
a boost.
there's different
You
versions.
put
of it.
a Model U thermal or a
Okay.
UA and a boost next to each other, and if you just glanced at them, you'd just think they was both thermals.
Okay.
I mean, they are identical if you just glance at them.
Just a different name, basically. Okay.
And then there was Parmaco, which
Right.
made and
Marietta.
yeah, Parkerville, West Virginia. Parkersburg, yep.
Sorry.
Which
Other side of the river.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry.
Which that's like a very interesting relationship too, because they were basically catered to the oil industry, and
those use the VEED injection as well.
They use the VEED injection,
but they also use a flyball governor.
They're a little more complicated.
The two that we own are like the holy shits of thermoils or VEEDs, because it's like if you put a side shaft and a flyball governor on something, it will run decent in Briggs and Stratton no matter what. And that was a
that was a big claim, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Horses and pigs.
There we go.
At least it wasn't Tecumseh or something.
But that was something that, but Parmico also and someone told me that story. I don't know who told me that story. There was I think there was legal action filed between Hercules and because they were copying a little too well.
Right.
But when you look at the GAs, right, our models, I mean, when you look at that, they're very complex and they're neat, but they've got some of the problems solved out because they gusseted the cylinders and they knew what was happening.
So we're in the 1920s at this point.
That's probably 1917, 1918.
Okay.
Yeah, those were early.
Yeah.
Those were early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because VEED was very aggressive at marketing his ideas to these engines.
Probably what happened is that the Hercules line took off,
and
Parmico was like, "Hey, this is the new hot thing. We're going
to jump on this bandwagon.
Not copy it.
Yeah, we're going to be
by copying it.
Right.
Well, they had thermoils that
they did. Well, you had Parmico engines that were thermoils.
Yeah, and they had Parmicos that looked like thermoil T's, but they weren't.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And then they went into their like what you guys have, where flyball governor, just side shaft down the side of it. It looks like a beefed up T.
Yep.
With a side shaft and a flyball governor.
Yep.
And then, like you said, then they got into copyright and all that other stuff with it.
And then you had St. Mary's was a big producer, and there was a couple others out there.
You had St. Mary's, Bulldog.
Yeah.
Well, St. Mary's, they didn't build the oil engines in St. Mary's, Ohio. They built those in Missouri.
Okay. After they moved.
Yeah, because
that was
plant burnt down, and
the whole company had moved by that
right.
point.
That's what. Yes.
Yeah, kept the name, but it was moved to Missouri.
That's correct.
So I would say this cycle basically ran 10 years, and then at that point, and this is probably where you can put some input in, Mike, you'll know better. But at that point, we start getting into the pump and line injection system.
There were big changes in World War I where there was so much advancement in manufacturing to support the immense requirements for weaponry that there was a lot of improvements in steel and also machining. And centerless grinding became a thing.
Right.
And grinding in general, which gives you these very precise surfaces in an economical level to where you could promote the pump line nozzle type thing, get the higher injection pressures. Also that the oil industry had changed in the 20s was a lot of changes, the catalytic process to make more gasoline, because now all of a sudden there's huge gasoline shortages because there wasn't enough in a gallon of crude to get enough to supply the market.
Yeah.
Right.
So that there was gasoline was extremely expensive in the mid-20s because it was so rare. So the catalytic cracking process comes out. There's a lot of changes.
Well, they dumped it all down the Cuyahoga River.
Well, they weren't doing that anymore, but they wish they had that back. They used to burn the gasoline off. But so they were also starting really to understand the refining process. They were starting to understand the science of hydrocarbon processing. And so fuel started to get much more consistent. It became like there were new industrial standards. So you could take your fuel samples and test them and see if you met the standard. If you didn't, you'd re-refine that batch or start over. So then the engine company responded by using the fact that this fuel was very consistent now to make specialized fuel systems that ran much better. The oil industry liked this because, again, these lighter crudes that we were talking about, like you were saying, Bria and that.
Yeah, Bria.
There was a lot of light ends, and that would actually just run straight on what it was pumping.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's the oil refinery, so the parking lot and the goo ends up in there. So that's why these injectors are all worn out because they'd be gooped out all the time.
Yeah.
But it was a big, that's why they like those De Laverne engines, because those oil engines would run straight on the crude right out of the ground.
The De Laverne that's here came just down the road from me, from Buckeye
from
Pipeline.
Black Run.
Yeah, right at Black Run.
Black Run.
So when you come to my house,
You all right?
on the right-hand side, when you take that exit, there's giant oil tanks right there.
No shit.
The De Laverne, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Even one Hawkins has was come from Trail Run.
Yeah.
I mean that's a nice engine.
Yep.
Yeah, and that one, there was the dark history of that goes way back into the mist of the past. So John Wilcox, the co-founder of the museum here, I remember him telling me that those engines were not original. Those 3 De Laverne Hornsby Ackroyd types. There was one in West Virginia or two in Ohio.
Okay.
The one here came from right under Zanesville.
Okay.
That's the one Paul brought up here in '69. And then the one John had was at Trail Run. We pulled that in 2010 after John had sold that place to Hawkins. And we went down there in 2010 and pulled that.
I say.
And Black Run was a pipeline station. I mean, oil gathering is like a tree. Out by where the wells are the thin branches.
Yeah.
And you'd have small engines. And before trucks, and the ability to transport the oil the way we do today, the oil would just run down into the valleys from the tanks at the oil wells. And there'd be bigger tanks there and engines and pumps. It would then pump the oil through a bigger pipe over the hill to the next area where it'd be like the tree getting closer to the trunk, bigger tanks, bigger engines, bigger pumps. And so, you be careful riding a trail bike in southeastern Ohio because there's 2-inch pipe everywhere. And so there's, that's what these small VID fuel system engines were used for in southeastern Ohio and here in PA, was to be in these little stations in the woods near the wells to pump the oil to the bigger stations. And these D. Laverne engines we're talking about.
They just act like a lift pump, essentially.
Yeah, they're just getting it up over the hill and down the next valley. And these bigger D. Laverne engines were at these bigger stations, which are closer to the trunk of the tree, which is getting close to the pipeline that's going to drive directly to the refinery. In Sistersville, West Virginia, the areas around this Trail Run station that John Wilcox bought in 1959. It was built in 1917, and the engines, I think, are from around 1902 or 3.
Okay.
And the rumor was that there was a pipeline in the Philadelphia area bringing oil from this part of Pennsylvania, but they very quickly didn't have enough horsepower.
Okay.
So that these engines were very quickly outrun. So they were put on the used market, and then the progenitors of the Buckeye pipeline actually brought those out to West Virginia and Ohio because they were bigger horsepower, 35 horse, and they would run on the crude.
Absolutely.
So those the one at Trail Run is at Dave Hawkins' place. The one that was at Zanesville is here. Paul Harvey got. And the one in West Virginia got scrapped. Some of the side shaft pieces here we use them to roll engines around on. So Wilcox went there when they cut her up, and he got the side shaft and sold it into chunks to move engines.
Yeah, at least some of them.
They're either here or Dave has them. We've used them, so they're still useful.
Yeah.
So there were 3 of those, and the 2 of them survive, and both are running. So then, those didn't use the VID system. They used a different system, but the VIDs were mostly used on smaller engines. But they were used on engines up to, I have a 20-horse St. Mary's here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's up to, I think, 65. Yeah. And then from there, they went to multi-cylinders, with, a couple crankshafts, if you want higher than that. But I don't think they ever got to really, really big sizes.
Yeah.
Well, does the St. Mary's diesel they bought here a couple of years ago that's sitting outside?
The twin.
That's
the
a
twin.
VID.
Yeah, it's a VID system.
It's the same as like his single cylinder.
Okay.
Essentially.
Just 2 of them put together.
Yeah.
Bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of like what we was talking about.
I was talking about this industrial processes and steel manufacturing improved during World War I. And today, why do we call these things diesels? Why don't we call them Ackroyds or Stewarts? Well, at the end of World War I, the camera's mounting on one of these engines we're getting ready to talk to. It's on a mid-20s Benz engine. So the Germans, they got the whole blame for World War I. And, they were the aggressors into the Low Countries, and their name was mud. And the French took all their industry, and they had these big reparation payments, and the reparations were bad. So they had to kind of renew their reputation. So one thing they started to do is, especially like Benson, other companies, they started promoting Rudolph Diesel. He died in 1913, disappeared off of a channel steamer. A body was found similar to his floating in the water a few days later. The fish had eaten his face. They couldn't get this picture of his driver's license. Oh, that's him, But they think he, like I said, the old lady wouldn't quit spending the money. And over the side he went. And then the conspiracy was that, because in 1914, all of a sudden these higher speed diesels show up in these German U-boats. They said, Diesel, he went into hiding, and they got some bum and hit him with a pipe and threw him off the side of the ship. And, he went into hiding and built these high-speed engines that went on these U-boats. I'm like, I don't believe that by much. But they wanted to, get their name back, so they started promoting the fact that these engines that now had these more precise pump line nozzle systems like we'd seen that were just made obsolete recently.
Yes, it's something more modern within the last 50 years.
Yeah, that started in the 20s where they were really promoting, the diesel name to say that, the diesel did this, diesel did that. everybody knew that these U-boats had diesels and that, and so it was kind of a marketing thing to get the diesel name associated with the oil engine, which absolutely worked, because we still call them that today.
Yeah.
And this engine that the camera's mounted on, you can't see, but you can come up here and see it. This thing was built in the mid-20s, and it's 12 horsepower, single flywheel. And there were 3 of these brought over as an experiment by, I forget which pipeline outfit brought them, to use them as pipeline pumping engines to, again, run on crude.
Right.
And I think John Wilcox said, I think he saved all 3 of them. One's here, one's in New Jersey that got sold off to some point. And I can't remember where the third one is. But these were a typical solid
It'd be kind of interesting
injection
to find
engine.
that third one. That'd be just kind of neat to know where it's at. It's got to be around somewhere.
I don't know.
I thought Peter Knight had it.
Does he?
I think so.
Okay. I have to ask him. I don't know.
Well, I'm camping right next to
Oh,
him.
maybe he got the one from New Jersey.
That might be.
Because I think there's even videos on YouTube of that running.
Yeah.
Maybe 15 years ago.
Peter has one,
Does he?
yeah, I'm fairly certain he does. I could be wrong.
It's just too senile to remember what John said happened to the third one.
Yeah.
Might have come apart because there was always a concern with the low end of these engines that they were kind of weak.
Well, there's not much there.
Yeah, and this one here used to sit on a wood frame that's next to it, and there were several of us were attempting to run it. Wilcox was always really worried about running it on that cheesy frame because he always thought that you really should support that crankcase better,
I mean, but how?
Well, you make a steel frame on it.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to do, is fabricate a steel frame for it.
Kind of like a girdle to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, though, I mean, if you just took that oil pan off the bottom, you'd have a Fairbanks YV.
It's 4-stroke second.
Well, besides that, but like
Besides that,
well,
besides
hold on.
Mrs. Lincoln, how'd you like to play?
Besides being completely different.
Let me explain.
All right, you got the floor.
Fairbanks YV, like mine, 50 horse, you can reach right up in there and just touch the crankshaft. I mean, you can just, like a proctologist, reach right up in there and just touch the crankshaft. So basically, if you took...
You're of that age, aren't you?
Getting close. If you took the oil pan off the bottom of this, I mean, you just have a crank sitting there.
Well, most engines are like that.
Well,
Drop
I mean-
the oil pan, there's a crank sitting there. What's your point, Vaughn?
I know what I want to say. I'm just trying to figure out how to say it.
I say, boy, spin it out there, boy. But you need the crankshaft.
So I guess supporting the bottom of it.
There's not a lot of structure between the
Well,
crankshaft
yeah, I
bearings
guess so,
and the
yeah.
bottom of the engine.
Yeah, I guess I see
The
what
oil
you're saying.
pan on that one is structural.
Oh, okay.
See the ribs in it?
Right. Okay.
The oil pan
For
looks
her
like
pleasure.
So the oil pan is actually helping hold everything else together.
What?
The oil pan's actually helping hold
Yeah.
the crankcase.
it looks
together.
like the oil pan's probably taking the brunt of it.
Yeah, they call that a sorry, folks, you can't see this. Now you know what Helen
I took a
Keller
picture
went
of
through.
it.
Oh, film at 11. And so that's a marine style engine. So you
Okay.
support on the sides
Right.
and then the crankcase is supported in the middle. That way, when the ship is flexing,
Right.
you're feeding that flexure. They're very stiff members on the side of that crankcase.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I need one of these.
Like a lot of locomotive engines are marine style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a support on the sides. Well, you're especially on that non-grade one.
Yeah.
So, would you say, Mike, diesel's more of a slang term? Mm-hmm. Okay, because we always get in this, like, everyone, you can really ruffle feathers when you say that it's a dual-cycle oil engine and they have a...
Conniption?
Yes, because they have a Dodge pickup truck that they've been in love with forever, and you know how that goes. And
Oil engine
Yeah.
would probably be the more correct term.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
generic oil engine. Any
Yeah.
cycle, anything that uses, doesn't use gasoline.
Doesn't use gasoline.
A heavier
Yeah.
fuel, that's an oil engine.
Yeah, they're an oil engine.
So I'm gonna take my Ford 6.0 oil engine
Yep.
and head to the house there Saturday.
6.0 turbo oil engine.
Turboed oil engine.
Well, there's a funny story about this, and when that
Uh-oh.
Red Good Burn, I think it was up in Minnesota or something like that, he had maybe about 10 thermoils. He had an auction. And
Okay.
It came up on one of the Facebook sites, and there's this young kid, and they had owned a thermoil about 2 hours, and they were industry experts on thermoils.
I got you.
And I was trying to very,
I think I remember
as-
this was
as
on the
most
Facebook
people
machine.
are.
yeah, very, very politely try to educate this,
Right.
and it was like, it's a diesel, it's a diesel, it's a diesel. And I'm like,
are we going on one of your Facebook rants?
Yeah. Oh my Lord.
I say, boy, it's a diesel.
It's a diesel. It's a diesel. And I'm trying to be like really diplomatic about
There's
this.
oil in them heels.
Yeah, it's a diesel. He told me it was diesel. It's a diesel. And you click on his profile, and it's the style. I am in love with my Dodge pickup truck, and I'm like, okay, it's a diesel. Then he got even more pissed off because it was like, what do you mean? I'm like, whatever you want to call it. It's if you're in love with a diesel, it's fine with it. But it's you're trying to educate it. It's just like they get so off the charts about it. But it's
sometimes people don't care. They're on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it was like, it's a Cummins, too. It's a Cummins. I know it's a Cummins. I know it's like,
it's a Cummins. It's just a breather car.
It's the guy that you get on the Facebook profile, and his profile picture is the big Cummins C.
Yeah, and that's
his background photo is his diesel, his 1994 Dodge. It's all rusted out with stacks blowing smoke up in the air.
That was about it, Chase. You
Okay.
got it. You nailed it pretty hard.
Yep, I know exactly.
That was Chase when he was 16 years old.
19.
Did you do that, Chase?
No.
I'm gonna pull up his Facebook to make sure.
Oh my gosh. Oh jeez.
Hang on, let me delete it real quick.
Hurry up.
And that was funny because like the Reading company for the railroad actually dieselized pretty early.
Yeah.
They were a big coal hauler.
Yep.
And there's actually the Historical Society maybe 30, 40 years ago put out this nice pictorial. They basically took all the build cards from the Reading company and put them in this book. And the original engines, towards the end of it, they were called DE for diesel electrics. But the original stuff from like 1920 to like 1940 was an OE, oil electric.
Yeah.
Because, at that time, everything seemed to be oil engine.
Yeah.
So.
Chase's profile picture.
What do you got?
Cummins diesel.
Sorry, Chase. I didn't
Do you know where that picture's taken and what car that's off of?
No.
It's at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I can tell you that.
That's not the 36. That's the 52 car, isn't it?
Well, that's the 36.
That's the wrong thing. That looks like that must be right, but the emblem in that. I thought that was a little bit later, but that's the 36 because the 52 car is yellow.
Yeah.
Is it up there too?
In 2007,
Hold on. Another Chase profile picture.
There we go.
You see that? I got one for both of you.
Did you buy an engine at Red Goodburn sale? I was arguing with you. Yeah, thank you. It was really Chase. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm staying out of this.
Dude, you're being Switzerland.
You don't need to give me that.
All right, well, those were both for him then.
Yeah, both barrels.
Yep.
It's an oil
Sorry.
engine.
It's an oil engine.
Please. With the
But
V
that
and
just
J.
goes to show you that in the 20s, when the railroads were experimenting with mechanical drive or electric drive, diesel, oil engine power, the Germans hadn't finished their marketing campaign yet, so it still said OE in the car.
That's I've always found that interesting. Yeah.
So I always love to bring up
Are you still having problems with, is the peanut gallery still on?
Oh, there's people driving by and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I got PTSD.
Well, yeah, you used to run on the railroad, right?
Yeah. But marketing has defined everything in our lives. Is marketing. And I think I said this last time we was together. It may have not been the best product, but it was the product that was marketed the best.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely. It sells.
Yeah.
Sales is important because that's the cash flow that keeps the company going.
Yep. Well, it just.
Yeah,
You done looking on my profile?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. I'll make sure I post that in the video. It's funny.
It is.
I did it. I know it. Hey, I
You
am
describe that person to
what's,
us.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
nothing.
Nothing.
I was in college. I was going to be a diesel technician. That was the new and great thing to me.
What, technician, not a mechanic, a technician.
Technician. I went to the Lincoln College of Technology in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're convenient to the track to go to the museum.
I have an
to see the
associate's degree in diesel technology. Makes me sound really smart. I am not.
He works for the railroad.
I work for the railroad.
car. Yeah, but I thought you did pretty good at the railroad.
I do.
Not pulling on wrenches on diesel engines.
That's how I started there, though.
Were you in a shop mechanic?
Yeah. I got like 2.5 years as diesel mechanic, locomotive mechanic.
So I guess
and I probably would have still been doing it if Genesee and Wyoming hadn't laid me off and gave me my only option to come back was to go into transportation department.
Oh, is that what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I started as a diesel mechanic, worked there under Jerry, the original High Central, and then in late 08, early 09, G&W bought us, and at that time we were running like 3 shifts in the locomotive shop. In the shop, and when G&W bought us, 3 shifts weren't needed anymore because first shift was like 4 diesel guys, and then the rest of it was all steam guys. Well, then they consolidated second and third shift after the steam was gone. So they consolidated second and third shift, which was guys that had more time in, to just putting everything to one shift during the day, first shift.
And there you went.
And then there I went to the bottom of the totem pole, and there was like 4 or 5 of us got laid off. Now, thankfully, they gave us the opportunity to come back, and I came back into the transportation department. And
Which meant what, conductor training?
Conductor. Yeah. So I did a conductor for 3 years, something like that, 3-4 years, and then went to engineer school. 2012, I got my engineer license. I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then I became a dispatcher, and then now management.
So where did the Ohio Central or G&W do the conductor and engineering training?
Well, at that time, when I did it, it was just right there. We were still, G&W was still small enough that they kind of let the individual railroads just, hey, whatever your process is, do it. Now, we have a standardized process across all of G&W properties, North American properties, including Canada, that everybody that is going into locomotive training will go down to Jacksonville, Florida, and we have our own training class down there 2 weeks, and we have a simulator down there too.
What is that, all the moonlighting CSX instructors?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
CSX runs out of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
If it was Atlanta, it would have been Norfolk.
Yeah. When Precision Railroading, Hunter Harris took over.
Precision.
Yeah, there's no such thing. It's a catchy term for shareholders.
Remember we talked about marketing? It's a big marketing term.
Yeah. Yeah. Look into Hunter Harris. He could sell 10 pounds of shit to
iced Eskimos.
Yeah. Yeah. He could sell iced Eskimos. That's exactly what he did. But yeah, when CSX kind of was doing their precision railroading thing, and they cut ties with a bunch of people. We already had our offices in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Then everything kind of, we had the cream of the crop if the crop was at the bottom of the barrel.
The moldy stuff that didn't get harvested last year.
So then now we have all this stuff where we, our new hires have to go through a training program. They get sent to designated trainers that are across the company, and then our locomotive engineer trainees go down to Jacksonville. They spend 2 weeks down there and get taught by a guy that probably hasn't run a train in 20 years.
Well, but you got a simulator, so you can really scare the shit out of it.
Yeah. When you're on a simulator, it's like sitting behind a computer and you can't feel what the train's doing in the
You don't feel it.
You don't feel this, or you don't hear the RPMs rev up or things like that.
It's just like driving
coming in and boom.
Yeah. It's just like driving a truck. I mean, you can sit behind a simulator all day long, but you don't know what that truck's doing.
Them gears shift real good on a simulator.
Right. Well, I mean, you can feel. It's just like running a steam engine. You can feel the truck. I mean, it becomes part of you, kind of. Loads going shifting. You can feel stuff.
So I'm a DSLE. It's a designated supervisor locomotive engineers. So DSLE is the guy that signs off on all locomotive engineers.
Right.
You mean like to accept them for the road?
They can either I say they're okay to run or they're not. Prior to like what I do now, I used to go out. I'm supposed to go out and check ride, but I've been so busy with new hires and all kinds of other stuff. I've been able to go out and like sit and ride with somebody. But there's times that like you'll sit down and try to explain to somebody, like you can't feel like what the train's doing. Like there's buff and draft forces in a train. I'm sure you know what they are.
I do not.
Buff and draft. Buff is when everything bunches up.
Okay, makes sense.
Draft is when everything pulls out.
Okay, there we go.
There's a thing called a node. The node is where there's neither buff or draft forces.
Okay.
So where your couplers are just floating back and
Drifting.
forth. Yeah, they're just kind of doing this.
Right.
There's no forces in between them. When you feel the node hit the locomotive, you've done something wrong because everything has come forward, and the last place that node can go is the locomotive.
Right.
So that means your train,
You've lost all your
your train is run in on you.
Yeah.
So now your entire train's pushing down on you. Your entire goal as an engineer is to keep that node
Tight.
somewhere other than where the locomotive is. You want to keep it floating in your train. Anytime that you feel like you're in a locomotive and you feel the cars behind you jerk, that means everything's stretched out.
Right.
You can pull a train in two that way.
Pull the damn draw head out.
Yeah, you can pull the
knuckle.
drawbar out. You can break a knuckle. You can do something like that. If everything runs in on you, then you can start stuffing accordion,
Right.
where you see the big pile-ups.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's when everything runs in on you. When we talk about running from the seat of the pants from a locomotive, that's the type of stuff you're feeling.
Right.
And we get guys we're a short line railroad, so we're not paying like class 1 rates. These guys aren't making 6 figures a year plus. So you're trying to teach a guy how to run from the seat of the pants when could go and make the same money at a warehouse.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, you're hauling like hazardous material and freight, things that can like blow up a community. You kind of have to care a little bit.
Right.
And that's where my job kind of comes in. It's not fun.
I mean, to try to get this across to them that you're
That they don't understand. Like trying to explain to somebody, like you have to feel what it's doing by like the jerking motion. And when they've dumbed it down so much, you have to wait a minimum of 3 seconds between throttle notches. They say it's for all the electrical fields and things like that to settle down, but no, it's because idiots will go to like notch 8 and you'll spike your amperage, and you'll either, if the wheel slip system on the locomotive's not working correctly, you'll start spinning wheels, or if you have like a real light train, or you're in a curve or something like that,
String line it.
you'll string line it. You can string line it because if you got 6 locomotives, we'll just say an SD40 locomotive. It's a type of locomotive. It's 3,000 horsepower per locomotive. If you have 4 of them, 4 times 3,000 horsepower, and you have an empty train that's only like 3,000 ton,
Right.
and you have that much horsepower on the head end, well, yeah, you're going to like either pull it off the rail, like literally pull it off the rail if it's in a curve or something like that.
Right.
It's things that people don't think about. They want to just show up and
We're
make
going
a
to
bunch
drive
of
a train today,
make
George.
a bunch of money and not have any responsibility.
Right.
So that's
Right.
Jeff Marks. He could,
Well, yeah.
me and him could sit
he's
here.
an engineer.
We could sit here and talk all day about stupid conductors.
Well, I mean,
and engineers.
it makes sense though. I mean,
But it's like driving it. It's like you've probably done it.
it's
when
like pulling a trailer that has a pintle hitch.
Yes, that's why it's like pulling a hay wagon around.
Yeah.
You learn real quick, like how to screw with the throttle on your tractor,
Yeah.
so that thing doesn't go clunk, 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 clunk.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in a locomotive,
Absolutely.
but you have 100 cars that are doing that
Right.
with couplers at each end.
Right.
So like 200 couplers.
Are you guys like no automatic air, or are you still automatic air?
I teach air.
Okay, because it's like, to me, that's the stupidest thing in the whole wide world. If you can't if you can't run the automatic, you shouldn't run a train. But that's
So I grew
not
up-
the world that we live in today.
I'm young, but I grew up in the early 2000s running trains.
Yeah.
And it was all guys that
Old
were
heads.
around it was all old heads. So it was all guys that was around 70s, 80s, and 90s.
2.5 to the left on the feed valve.
Yep. Oh, yeah. That thing back
Yep.
there behind the control
Yep.
stand, the thing you're not supposed to touch.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
play
not the
with that.
WABCO manual, so
Yep.
don't touch it.
You need a little bit more,
Yep.
just do this. Yeah, but no, you're exactly right. So I learned the airway, and we're a short line railroad, and we switch customers. Well, you can't switch customers with dynamics.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. You use your independent, you use your automatic, and you use throttle.
Yep.
We get guys that are coming in, contractors. So I had to let go like 4 contractors that were all class 1 guys that came from BNSF and like down south, some big railroad, Kansas City Southern. They were all over the road, heavy haul, flat plane.
Yep.
You touch the throttle, you put the locomotive basically does its own thing, and then all you do is just start and stop it and make sure you don't hit somebody. They come up here to a short line where you're switching customers. It's all dark territory where you don't have signals, anything like that. It's all, track warrant. You have to call and physically talk to somebody over the radio or a cell phone to get permission to occupy the track. It's all 30 mile an hour or less track. and it's not mountain grade territory, but it's grade territory. Mountain grade is 2% or more over like a span of like 2 or 3 miles. I forget what it is. Yeah. Is mountain grade.
That's steep.
Yeah, for a locomotive.
Traction locomotive.
Yeah. So, but we have grade, and how like we run on the old Penn Twin that ran to St. Louis. Is one of our lines that runs from Steubenville to Columbus, and there's nothing flat on it. If you look at a track chart, it's this, and it's all like 1%, 2% increases. You might have and at that time it wasn't a big deal because you weren't running 10,000 foot long trains. Well, now if you're running a 10,000 foot long train and you have all these bowls, well, go back to that node that you're trying to keep track of. Well, you're pulling uphill. Half of your train's coming up a hill, and the front half of your train's going down a hill. By the time the middle of your train has crested the hill, the front half of your train is now going up the next hill.
Right.
So your train is like this, and you're trying to, in your head, figure out what your train's doing and manage that. And it's just...
That sounds
it's
like
an old school. That
sounds stressful.
By today's standards, it's an old school way of running. Is what we call running by air, because using air physically applies brakes to every car. So now that costs money because now you have to change brake shoes.
And that's also talent, and they don't want talent; they want more bodies.
Yes,
because that's a whole. They
want everybody to use dynamics because dynamic braking is just regenerative braking on the locomotive, and you just do it from the control stand of the locomotive, where you just go out of throttle into dynamic braking, and the locomotive slows the train down. Well, there's
which it's a combination of dynamic and air.
You can do dynamic braking, but you have to think miles ahead of when you're going to get into it, because of when you start slowing the train down from the head end, you have to slowly get all those buff forces to come in on you. You can't just do it all at once because then you're going to have a run in. So, then things can go bad. You can, pop a car, especially like a train buildup, depending, say you have like 30
empty gondola.
30 loaded cars, one empty gone, 30, 40, 50 loads. Well, everything comes together. Well, guess what? You got a car that weighs 180,000 pounds hitting a car that weighs 30,000 pounds. What do you think is going to happen to that car that weighs 30,000 pounds?
It's going to
spit it
out.
Right. So then, guess what? Everything's derailed. Call R.J. Corman. Let's spend a bunch of money because we're going to pick everything up. So, yeah.
Well, and the problem too with automatic, there's a delay in the action. You know what I mean? And you have to think you're ahead of your brake, and then you have to, because you can put too much air on, too little air on.
Well, and the biggest thing with like automatic now, because of what they teach our guys down in Jacksonville, and to use dynamic braking, they don't teach automatic braking. They just automatic is like your
evil.
Yeah, it's evil, and it's the last thing you do when you're coming down to a stop.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're out of dynamics because a lot of our locomotives don't have extended range. They're old enough; they don't have extended range. So, like, okay, well, you get out of your automatic, or you get out of your dynamic, and then you can use your automatic, and you just put like a minimum one, and let it bring you down to a stop.
Dynamic braking is where you use the traction motors in the trucks of the locomotive. You turn them into generators.
Yeah, and they go into big grids.
So you have toaster oven elements on top of the locomotive,
which are fun when they let go because it's a spark show and a fire show. Yeah.
But then you just turn the energy of the motion of the locomotive and the whole train into heat.
Yes.
You just make those hot.
Yep.
And it saves brakes, but now that you're going to, the locomotive's doing the stopping and the cars are going to run in on you.
It has its place for
over the road stuff.
Foo-foo.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's really good, and there's a place for everything.
It absolutely has it on like our road trains and things like that. Absolutely, 100%. I am behind using dynamic braking, but it is
they want you to
taught.
Switch with it?
It is taught that switching. Just all train movements in general should be done with.
Always on regen.
Yeah.
Dynamic.
But
that's how a Tesla works.
But this is where it goes back to where you have guys from CSX coming in that don't switch industries because CSX and these large class ones want to go point A to point B. They don't do industry switching.
Yeah,
so
you
they're not
don't
familiar
use the
with
train
it.
to switch.
Yeah, they're not familiar with it. So they teach point A to point B train handling. Then they come up here and we're a short line, we're switching customers. And then now, I'm like, ugh. It's like, then you fight the battle. It's like, well, that's not how they taught us. I'm like, I don't care what they taught you. This is how, like, this guy that's been here for 25 years, listen to him. This is how you need to switch.
Well,
This is
it's
how
like-
I want you to switch.
It's like getting your CDLs. I mean, you take everything you know about driving, you throw it out the freaking window, you read their book, and if you drive like you read their book, you're going to die.
Yeah.
You'll pass the test.
Well, you'll pass the test, yeah.
Oh, and CSX's Conrail successfully exterminated.
Yeah. Conrail's still around. Did you know that?
Yeah.
No, they're in Jersey.
Yep. And Michigan, I think.
Maybe Michigan.
I think there's Michigan.
In my backyard.
Conrail?
Hey, yeah, my caboose is Conrail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Little Miami Railroad that ran from Columbus to Cincinnati in 1843, and it became part of the New York Central system. Or no, that's Pennsylvania. It became part of the Pennsylvania. That's how Pennsy got into Cincinnati. It existed until 1981.
Little Miami did?
Little Miami Railroad existed until December of 1981.
Really? I didn't know that.
It went with Norfolk Southern.
See, my
Really
caboose,
weird. It's really weird that lasted that long, but just changing hands and being, it was part of the Pennsy for years and years and years.
Yeah.
It's weird because it's a bicycle trail now. It's like, you ride on that, it's like, God, just think about K4s. And they actually had T1s come down on this thing.
T1 would be awesome to see.
And
T1 Trust, I'd love to see their.
Did you see they got the frame
Yeah,
fabricated?
I'd love to see that finished. Hopefully I live long enough.
You might see it. I don't think I will.
Hopefully I live long enough.
Did you ever hear the story that was in Trains about the
We're on a locomotive and train tangent, folks. Please stand
Yep,
by. The
stand
trouble's
by.
not in your set.
and I have no idea what they're talking about.
Did you ever hear the story
I'm
that
just-
was in
I'm-
Trains
I'm just here.
when the diesel crew got the T1 at the end?
I don't know if I have or haven't.
There was this crew, and it was probably like Crestline area or something like that. And they were starting to go over to like the F3s and everything like that. And these guys were getting really accustomed to having diesel.
Yeah.
So they came in the one day, and I think they were thinking they were getting diesels. And here comes this cruddy T1. And they're like, oh, shit. And it was like, and the thing's just like a mess. So they get the train, and they're like, I was an engineer fireman. And the fireman told the story, and they were like, they get it cleaned up, and they're like, they're ready to go at the station, and the engineer looks at the fireman and he says, this is probably the last time we're going to run one of these. Let's see what it can do. Are you on board? And the fireman goes, sure, let's do it.
He's like, I'm going to shovel some coal
Yep.
today.
So they go out,
Yeah. Turn the auger on.
they get the thing cleaned up, and they're gone. And all of a sudden, it's like, they're going. And I forget what the fireman said they had it up to, but it was 110 or something like
bet.
that. I think they were capable
Yeah.
of that.
They'd easily do that.
Yeah, they got like 6-7 foot wheels on them
Yeah.
things. So
Oh,
they're
that big, yeah.
massive. They would.
Steam locomotive.
A T1's
Yeah.
a special type of steam locomotive, one of the last types designed by the Pennsylvania Railroad. Pennsy built 2 of them in Giniata shops, and they built 48 at Baldwin. But they came in, they were really a special thing, but they hit during the war, and they just decided to go ahead and build the 50 of
Yeah.
them. And then they didn't, they were basically very quickly outclassed by diesels, and I think by 52 or 53 they were all done. And they didn't work well in the eastern part of the Pennsylvania Railroad. They didn't like the hills and the curves.
They were a flat plane.
So the Crestline, Ohio, is where the Pennsy starts to flatten out and
Yeah.
heads to Chicago. And they called it the racetrack. And
Yep.
these were the T1s between 42, 43, and 52. They really ruled the rails and would just fly. And they were
Yeah.
doing like 120.
Yeah. So your steam engine, I know you kind of seem shocked that he's going like 90 mile an hour. Your steam engines back in the day, you had 2 different ways to determine. Well, one way to easily determine if a locomotive was freight
Right.
or passenger, just by looking at the wheels.
Okay.
Your freight engines had small wheels because you got more tractive effort.
Right.
If it's bigger the wheels on it, faster that sucker would go.
So
Faster
that's why
service.
English steam locomotives have really
These
big
huge wheels because they were
all passenger.
high speed.
Very high
which,
speed.
yeah,
Right.
not high speed by today's standard, but
Right.
high speed for
And like a Shea locomotive
The
has
early
little
19
tiny wheels.
Yeah.
yeah.
That little sumbitch is just pulling logs up the mountain.
I rode that this week. I
And it
rode
can
that this
take
year.
really
Yeah.
rough
Right.
rail because
I was down in Cass and rode to Shea.
Really.
Yeah,
That's West Virginia.
Cass, West Virginia.
Yeah, I
Yep.
want to do that.
Did you go all the way up where you could see the radar telescopes?
So the day we went up to the whatever the halfway is, because it was super cloudy, and we didn't bother up to Bald Eagle Mountain,
Yeah.
whatever it is. We didn't go all the way up. We went whatever to
I think you have to
Whitaker.
go all-
We went up to Whitaker.
Go all the way up to see the radar telescopes. You ever been up there to
Greenbrier?
see-
You talking about Green Bank?
Green Bank,
Yeah, I've been to Green Bank.
Yeah.
I go and camp down there every year at Seneca Rocks, and Green Bank's like 40 minutes from there.
Did you go and take the tour and look at them?
No.
Okay.
No, my spidey senses were tingling. My tinfoil hat was arcing. And
Yeah, Green Bank is the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. There's a very large, probably one of the largest moving objects ever made. It's a giant radio telescope that listens for celestial static.
Yeah. I have pictures of it, so I'll throw that in here too. Because I'm a nerd.
And the attempt was at Sugar Grove is a town near Green Bank,
Yeah.
and the Navy wanted to build a 600-foot movable dish, because what the idea was okay.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. You're good. It's still going.
So anyway, so that the Navy wanted to build this big dish, and the idea was the Soviet Union was experimenting with their radars in the 50s, but the Soviet Union was so big that you could never detect the signals from their radars to understand what they were doing. So the idea was to point this giant dish at the moon, and when the moon was setting in Russia, the radio waves would be blasting to the moon and bouncing back. And the receivers of the day needed a 600-foot dish, but mechanically it just wasn't going to work. But they created what's called the National Radio Quiet Zone around that area to protect this big naval dish. Well, then they decided, we got this radio quiet zone, so let's go over here and just build these radio telescopes that would do about the same thing, And in Arecibo, down the thing that fell apart a few years ago and collapsed.
Yeah, down Colombia or Brazil?
It was in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. I do it was one of the southern.
A 1,000-foot giant dish that just pointed up, but it was the same thing when the moon was setting in the Soviet Union. They could receive the radar signal. Oh, it's for atmospheric sounding and all that, and it was just to listen to the Russian radar sets.
Yeah.
But so this area in West Virginia is very hilly. In radio astronomy, you get behind the mountains to protect you from radio signals coming in. It's very much restricted, with cell phone use and CB radios. And I don't know about today, but last time I was down there, the cars were old, like 1970s Volkswagen diesel rabbits, and there was a switch on the dash, and there was a certain sign you pass, and it says turn off alternators. You'd kill that switch, and it would kill the alternator and make it quiet, because very faint radio signals could cause.
Well, I was gonna say at one point, like the little town right there at Green Bank or whatever the town it is, nobody was allowed to have a radio controlled garage door opener.
Yeah.
It was all just, if you
push the button.
Yeah. There's none of that. You couldn't have it. I don't know what they do now, but I know when you show up in there, cell phone service for Verizon, which is what I have, is spotty down there. It is non-existent when you get there. I'm like, none. Like, if you have anything at all, once you get within 10 miles or so of it, gone. That's probably with all carriers down there. Like ham radio operators are limited. There's everything is just really restricted. There's one gas station and maybe like 20 houses in this town, and I can understand why, because I don't think anybody wants to live there anymore.
Well, getting back on railroads.
Yes.
I want to go out to the Durango and Silverton.
I've been there.
Have you really?
Yeah.
I want to ride that rail. I want to take a ride.
I've never seen worse rail. The only worse rail I've ever seen in my life is the New Orleans streetcars. I walked. Oh my God, they're flat and all curled. And I took the roundhouse tour. I said, "What's with your rail?" He says, "What do you mean?" I says, I've never seen rail as bad as that. And I stopped along and looked. It's bad. It was. Yeah. This is back in the '90s when I rode it. And the guy just shook his head. We rode it. I don't know. It was like 20. When did I get married? 21.
Okay.
We rode it in 21, and we didn't go all the way up to Silverton. We went up to Cascade, which is like
go to the Y and turn
around.
We
went up to Cascade where the Y is and turned around because the snow was still covering the tracks.
When I rode it, same thing. They had a D10 up there trying to get it open.
Yeah.
We went to the Y and came back.
We went up to the Y and came back.
Yeah.
And
I watched it on YouTube one night. It looks awesome.
Oh, it's cool.
So the first time I work for the railroad. I understand trains. I like steam locomotives, but I give two shits less about like going out and like actively searching for railroads to go like ride.
Right.
We were just in Colorado in 18, I think.
92.
Yeah, 1892. Somewhere
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
In 2018, we was over there. We started up in Wyoming. We was up at Grand Tetons. We made a big like 1,000-some-mile journey. Now, Grand Tetons is a French word for big tits, if you didn't know that.
Well, I knew that.
Yeah. But we was up at the Grand Tetons. Did the big old 1,000-some-mile journey down, and we flew out of Durango. Well, while we was spending the last day in Durango, we stayed at we ate at a place, I forget what the name of it was, Palace something, but it was literally right next to where the Durango and Silverton rail yard was at. And as we were sitting there waiting, one of their afternoon train was coming back in. Well, me being with my wife and her best friend for the last 7 days, any remote thing that was old and cool that was interesting to me, when I heard this steam locomotive come rolling in, I'm literally sitting at our table. I got a steak that was delicious in front of me, and I'm up, going out, and I stood out there and watched this thing roll in. I got a bunch of pictures of it. So fast forward,
Foamer.
yeah.
I hope you finished your steak.
So I did. I went back. It was a delicious steak. Now that place that had the steak, it was freaking delicious. They during COVID, they couldn't find any wait staff, and then they went under. Now it's not even open anymore.
Oh, it's failed.
Yeah. It was Palace something. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it was literally right across from where the depot was. Well, anyway, we went back, and we were in 21. And I'm like, you know what? That would be kind of cool to ride. So we got tickets. We rode up to Cascade and went back. Now, that was all their locomotives now are oil burners. They did away with coal. Everything's oil burner now.
Well, they got blamed for those fires.
Yeah. Yep. Now, we drove the $1 Million Highway up to Silverton because we wanted to see what Silverton was, because it's like a legit Wild West ghost town.
Right.
Well, it's not a ghost town, but it's a legit Wild West town.
Tourist trap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're like big claim of fame. It's like, our main street's dirt. I'm like, that's because you're stupid.
Right.
Like, there's no reason that you can't pave this. It's like, this is just your draw to get people in here.
That's tourism,
Yeah.
Tourist trap.
So we went up there and we...
Marketing.
Yeah. It goes back to marketing.
I get to go on a train right here coming up in December, I think.
Where at? Hawking?
No, Connorsville.
Oh, yeah, the old
Whitewater Valley.
Whitewater Valley.
Oh, okay.
It's for the what the hell's Polar Express.
Yeah.
I dress up in my pajamas, which
Somebody out there?
My sister was, they're looking, I see these faint ghostly shadows. My sister was on it when it derailed, and I mean, it didn't just come down in the gauge. It went over and slid down the embankment and up
that's a
against
good
the
one.
tree. So I've never been in a derailment, but boy, she was. Was on that white
I get to dress up in my pajamas, but the thing is,
They
my
used to have a
pajamas are my
Geisler.
underwear.
When I
Hey,
was
if you need to come up to Denison and do ours. We run one in December.
We need to go to the Age of Steam Roundhouse.
Well, when you come up, let me know when.
yeah,
we'll take Murphy with us.
We can all go.
I'd like to see that because
Well,
Jerry
I'll get you
He's
the...
part of our
when
podcast.
the GW
Yeah.
bought it, wasn't he supposed to have certain trackage rights to run steam?
He does. He just don't.
I thought they wouldn't let him do it. They reneged on it. But
Okay.
so it was,
Well, our lawyers don't. Our lawyers...
the peanut gallery is getting really drunk and they're starting to crowd around us, Oh, look at this.
Come in.
Look at
Wow,
this.
look at this.
Oh, look at this. Here he comes.
Were you waving us on?
Ex-President Chris Austin,
El Presidente.
machinist extraordinary.
Hey, we're at like almost 3 hours again anyway.
Hey, do you want to hear the end of this T1 story, by the way?
Yeah.
That was like
an hour and a half.
5 minutes
did.
Or
ago.
an hour.
So this crew gets his T1, right?
This is all hashed up.
I'm
And they're
good.
like, let's see what it can do. Now, I guess the basically in that area, the idea was the road foreman looked the other way
Need to
when
keep,
it came
Chris.
to making time. They didn't care. So I forget what the whole details of it was, but they're just making time, and they got this thing really cooking, and they're hauling the mail.
This is the president? I
So
thought
they
he was the president.
they come to the wherever their terminal was, and one of the crew callers comes down, and he goes like this to the road foreman. They're like, "Oh shit, we're in trouble now." So they go upstairs to the road foreman, and they're figuring they're getting shit canned. So they go in, and the first thing he says, he goes, "So which one of you taking pilot training?" Because that was way too fast. And he proceeds to like totally rip their ass out about, "You never do this, that we went too fast, blah, 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 blah." And they're like, "We're going to get fired." So he goes, "You two get out of here." So they turn around, they get out of there, they're expecting that they're going to get canned. And he goes, "Hold on, one more thing." And they're like, "Oh, shit."
Oh my God.
And he
that was
goes,
terrible.
"Good job." So he had to rip their ass out, but he really was happy they did it.
The story I told was the last week of Jay's in 59. The last week of Jay's between Huntington, West Virginia and Cincinnati, the guys were like, this is it.
Yep.
this is it. And I think that what I heard was 127 miles an hour.
Is that what it was?
Run along the Ohio River, down in Kentucky. 11/11?
11/11.
1918?
Make a wish.
We're in an insulated building. Did you turn the daggone Western off? I got these things. I can't hear anything anyway, but I can't hear. But these guys, a jail do that. I mean, I'm not surprised at all that had happened. But the B&O guys, the old engineers, and the guy that lived across the street from me he started in 1917 in that really bad winter. Mm-hmm. He said one of his first jobs was to take the locomotives out of the shed and just go back and forth until the pilot would start to roll because the grease had set up. And he worked until the 40s. But he said that they took him to diesel school, and he was in there for a few days. And then they took you out in the yard, and they said, "Okay, get up in there." And he sat down, and he released the brakes, and went to the end of the yard limit, backed up, and climbed down and said, "That's it. I'm done." He said, "This is stupid. That's it." He walked away.
All right, well, I guess we're going to end it here. The peanut gallery is taking over, so.
Well, wait a minute. Were we talking about these? Did we finish the whole VEED thing? Are we good?
Yeah, we're as good as we're going to be because we're at 3 hours.
Because the tape's running out.
Well, yeah. The chaperones have shown up again.
Yeah, if you have a chance, you want to look at coolspringpowermuseum.org, right? Or com? .com.
I don't know. Just
one
Google,
of the two.
Google Coolspring, no S.
Yeah, no S.
Coolspring Power Museum.
That's correct. It's in Coolspring, Pennsylvania, which is 16 miles from Punxsutawney Phil. Which, who gives a shit about a groundhog?
Anyway, that's where we're at. Hopefully you can keep up with what we talked about for the last 3 hours.
Chase is headed to the Dresden, Ohio show Saturday.
Yeah.
Farm, what's it called?
Country Crossroads Education.
Yep. I'm going to try to stop by on our way home. And other than that, hopefully here in the next few weeks, we'll get back together.
And give us some feedback if you can keep up with this fever dream of a podcast we just did.
Yeah.
Do you have any... any
Go
ideas
ahead.
for the next June show BS session that will be probably 3+ hours?
Yeah,
Those
maybe
people
some of them.
Yeah, maybe some of them that hide in the shadows.
Yeah, they want to.
Working.
Yeah, maybe some of them. So, yeah, there's always plans. But if you enjoy it, let us know. If not, we won't do it anymore.
Until next time.
Till next time.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.